Last day of the season.
When the team and the town got together to celebrate. For Darlington and Hartlepool, it's been one round of applause, handshakes and civic receptions, until today, that is, because 4th Division champions Darlington suddenly find themselves without the man who inspired their revival, and that's Brian Little. Roger Thames now reports.
Even as Brian Little walked out to take more public acclaim at Tuesday night's civic reception, he was weighing up an offer from 2nd Division Leicester City. The former England international was the Quakers' most successful manager ever, but he never disguised his ambitions. Less than 48 hours later, what a difference in the mood. Brian Little could still afford to smile. His success had been rewarded with a contract at Filbert Street. Darlington's chairman was despondent, though not surprised.
Well, we tried to keep him, obviously. It's a big disappointment to me. I rate him, like I've said in the past, £1 million manager. I'd rather have Brian here than £1 million.
I had a feeling something would happen fairly soon, yes. As I say, in the last 2 days, really, the telephone's been going in connection with Aston Villa, a football club which I have a tremendous affection for. But I have to confess, as I've said, after speaking to Leicester City, I'm very clear in my own mind that the right decision has been made regarding my own future. It's a difficult decision. You know, my head was telling me really that from a personal point of view, you know, perhaps the time was there to come, but my heart was very much telling me to stay here.
Frank Gray, the man who scored the Quakers' last goal in the 4th Division, could be a possible successor, but Little is bound to want his assistant to join him in the Midlands. Now the champagne has all been drunk, Darlington have a major job to keep their momentum going. The club will get financial compensation and a glowing reference from Little.
I know that whoever comes here will be working with a group of people who are very dedicated, very ambitious, and will give that manager every support he needs in the future.
Brian Little, the manager who led Darlington from non-league football to the 4th Division Championship in just 2 seasons, has resigned and joined 2nd Division Leicester City. Little, one of the most sought-after managers in the game, had been linked with several clubs throughout the season. Darlington say they're now seeking substantial compensation from Leicester.
It was always inevitable that Brian Little would move on eventually, but it didn't become clear until today just how quickly Leicester City had moved to secure his signature at Filbert Street. Indeed, as Darlington were enjoying a civic reception in the town on Tuesday, Leicester directors were heading north by helicopter to talk to their man.
It's a very exciting day for us today. I've been saying for the last period that we need to make significant changes, and I think this is the first positive step. I've been able to demonstrate to the Leicester public that that's exactly what we are going to do.
After his news conference in the Midlands this morning, Little rushed back to face the local press in Darlington's boardroom for the final time. Chairman Richard Corden said he'd be greatly missed, but wished him well.
Well, we tried to keep him, obviously. It's a big disappointment to me. I rate him, like I've said in the past, £1 million manager. I'd rather have Brian here than £1 million.
Never, and there never ever will be a right time to leave football club. But I like to think that I've done everything I possibly can. It's a difficult decision. You know, my head was telling me really that from a personal point of view, you know, perhaps the time was there to come, but my heart was very much telling me to stay here.
Little's turn with the help of the referee, but what skill he's got.
As a player, Little began and ended his career with Aston Villa. With his skill and long hair, he was often compared to George Best.
Little, and Burridge just grabs it.
Darlington gave Little his break into management, but his first taste was a bitter one. They slipped out of the Football League into the Vauxhall Conference. But in just 2 seasons, not only were they back, but he took them into Division 3 as champions of the 4th. Just 2 days ago, Little and the team received a civic reception. By then, Leicester were well on the way to securing his services.
4th Division champions Darlington have moved swiftly to replace manager Brian Little, who yesterday moved to Leicester City. It took chairman Richard Corden less than 24 hours to convince Little's number 2, Frank Gray, to take over. The former Scottish international had been tempted to follow his old boss to the Midlands, but he's staying at Feetham's along with Tony McAndrew, who moves up to assistant manager.
I've had a great 2 years with Brian, and I'm grateful for Brian
grateful to Brian for bringing me here in the first place. We've had a great relationship over 2 years, but it wouldn't have been right for me at this time to move to Leicester.
Well, it was very important that we had continuity in the club. If he had gone, and the rest of the lads had gone, we'd have been left with nobody and having to appoint a new manager, and he would have had to bring his own people in. So it was very important that we kept the continuity of the club.
I said for a long time that I've always wanted to get into the management side, and I see this as an ideal opportunity. And hopefully we can build on what we've worked to achieve in the last 2 years. Hopefully, my intention is not to stop playing yet, and we'll see how things are at the start of the season after we get through. Hopefully what will prove to be a good pre-season.
The club has moved quickly to find a replacement for Brian Little, who quit as manager yesterday to join second division Leicester City. Just 24 hours after Little left, we were back at Feetham's this afternoon to hear his replacement will be Frank Gray, for the last 2 years the number 2. So, had it been an easy decision for him to take the job?
It wasn't difficult. I've said for a long time that I've always wanted to get into the management side, and I see this as an ideal opportunity. And hopefully we can build on what we've worked to achieve in the last 2 years.
It was very important that we had continuity in the club. If he had gone, and the rest of the lads had gone, we'd have been left with nobody and having to appoint a new manager, and he would have had to bring his own people in. So it was very important that we kept the continuity of the club.
Would he be player manager, or is it the end of Frank Gray as a player now?
Depends how my assistant feels. If he feels I'm fit enough. Hopefully my intention is not to stop playing yet, and we'll see how things are at the start of the season after we get through. Hopefully what will prove to be a good pre-season.
Scenes at Darlington when they eventually won the 4th Division title will be etched in the minds of every Feetham's fan when they begin the assault on the 3rd tomorrow without Brian Little at the helm. Whether Frank Gray can follow in his mentor's footsteps is yet to be seen. One thing is certain, he'll have to plan his tactics without Gary Gill. He slapped in a transfer request today and is obviously not happy at the club. The boss is still convinced, though, that they've got the side to go for the top again.
There won't be a great deal of change from the way things have been run the last 2 years. We had very much the same idea and thoughts on how things should be done at the club, and I'll continue along those lines.
Now have the chance to bring you 3rd Division action. But both sets of fans will be wondering if these two long-suffering clubs can at last establish themselves in a higher grade of football.
Back in the 3rd Division and up against a team who've spent big in the summer. Darlington needed a slice of luck, and they got it. Early in the second half, David Cork began a move down the right. Gary Gill, who wants to leave Feetham's, crossed first time, and Bournemouth defender Alex Watson did the rest. Darlington go 1-up. The second goal had the Quakers stamp all over it. Andy Toman's free kick, Jim Willis stealing in, and Frank Gray's men 2-0 ahead. Bournemouth did pull a goal back. Somehow the South Coast cameraman missed it. A minor problem, with Darlington holding on to a winning start in Division 3.
Thoughts of a league game between Darlington and West Brom would have been laughable. Yet the Midlands side, in their first ever visit to Feetham's, had to fend off 2 early threats. That one from Andy Toman. Then another long-range effort, this time from Gary Gill. Manager Bobby Gould didn't think it too funny, though. But West Brom are favourites to win promotion from the 3rd, and although Gary Piggott's header wasn't strong enough here, they pinned the home side back for long spells. In the second half, Steve Mardenborough replaced his boss on the park and bullied his way into almost creating Darlington's best opening, but the danger was cleared. The crowd, by the way, more than 5,500. The save of the match came from Mark Prudder when he flung himself in front of Don Goodman's point-blank blockbuster. A minute later, a rare error by Jim Willis let in substitute Paul Williams. This time Prudder narrowed the angle and the shot clipped the outside of the post. There were just 3 minutes left when West Brom clinched it. Williams made amends by heading back for Goodman to finish. Darlington won't find many better opponents in Division 3. Muscat Birmingham, who've won 4 out of 4 this season in League and Cup. When Jim Willis's attempted clearance only found Simon Sturridge, he beat Mark Prudder to continue the Brummies' winning start.
Are better days in recent weeks. Darlington and Scarborough in particular will be more than relieved to have pulled out timely victories.
In their title-winning form at last, Wigan were off the pace when on loan Gary Hamilton floated in the free kick. Mitch Cook catching the keeper off his line. Frank Gray's side dominated most of the game, and Wigan didn't get back on level terms until the 89th minute. Darren Patterson's header hits the post, but Gary Powell's hits the target. I'm assured John Borthwick responded by firing in the winner just seconds later, but apologies Quakers fans, it's been lost in Lancashire.
Of non-stop success, the bubble seemed to have burst rather for Darlington. They've been finding the third division tough going, losing 5 out of the last 6 games and seeing 3 players sent off along the way. Against Shrewsbury Town, it had to get worse before it got better. Darlington's recent spate of sendings off was beginning to hurt, with Mick Tate and Mitch Cook both starting 3-match bans against Shrewsbury. And the slump continued when the visitors took the lead on the quarter hour. Carl Griffiths, the man on the end of the free kick. 6 minutes from half-time, one of those inexplicable moments. The defence looked to have it under control, but Mark Crudder just loses the ball. Tony Henry's lucky day. Jack Charlton made a rare visit to Feethams, and certainly the upsurge in second-half entertainment made his trip worthwhile. 20 minutes after the restart, the game burst into life. Lee Ellison took the ball in his stride to pull a goal back. But those maddening moments at the back spoiled it again. Within a minute, the long ball to the far post caught out the defence, and Griffiths couldn't miss from there. But at least Darlington had revived a bit of self-belief, and with it a touch of fortune. John Borthwick bangs the ball goalwards, straight at Tim Parkin's hands. The centre-forward spot is up for grabs at Feethams. Ellison did his cause no harm to make it 3-2. Darlington now unrecognisable from the dispirited mob of the first half. After 73 minutes, Gary Hamilton on loan from Middlesbrough, finding his first league goal since his long layoff. Not a bad way to resume service. With such a head of steam built up, they could well have won it. Ellison's hat-trick only stopped on the line. Then, with just a minute left, Gary Gill could have produced a glorious finale, but perhaps he was just a shade too keen to burst the net. But at least Feethams had seen what Darlington still can do on their day. News for Darlington, though. The Quakers will sign the former Sunderland midfield player Nick Pickering on a free transfer from Derby County. He'll make his debut against Hartlepool on Saturday.
Return to the region of Sunderland old boy Nick Pickering. He signed for Darlington this afternoon in a bid to strengthen the Quakers' quest for points in the third division. He'll be thrown straight in at the deep end this weekend for the latest North East derby match against Hartlepool.
The South Shields-born player joined his new teammates for the first time this morning at their training session. Pickering has been given a free transfer by Derby County boss Arthur Cox and is delighted to be back in his native North East.
It's nice to be back. Just glad Frank Gray's given us a chance to show what I can do again.
Darlington have been struggling recently. What do you think you can bring to the side?
Well, hopefully, I think we've got to tighten up the defence and, and give a bit of experience. Played a lot of football and, hopefully pop a few goals in myself.
Nick's arrival gives his new boss more scope to change things around and hopefully put a string of wins together.
Yes, very pleased. Another body for us to pick from. We've been struggling a bit recently with injuries and suspension, so Nick will add to the squad and he'll add a little bit more class and creative ability than we've had recently.
Was it a difficult mission to get him here?
No, I think, half the battle was that Nick wanted to come to this area anyway, and eventually moved back to the area. So from that point of view, location-wise, we're ideal. And after speaking to him, he seems keen to come and he's looking forward to get back training again.
Derby match between Darlington and Hartlepool. They're not exactly setting the league alight, but there'll be plenty of suspense at Feethams tomorrow.
Let's hope there are no more suspensions, though. Hartlepool's Mick Smith is banned from the game after this punch a couple of weeks ago, and skipper Paul Baker is also missing after getting his marching orders for a headbutt. Darlington, though, are training with almost a full squad again. Mick Tate and Mitch Cook are back after 3 match bans, though Jimmy Willis is still out. But Nick Pickering's arrival will help pull back the ground on their local rivals.
Be a good atmosphere, both clubs in the third division, obviously. Last season's games in the fourth division were good, tight games, and I'm sure this one will be no different. Obviously, I'd like to have a few more points than we've got, but it's still fairly early. But I'd like to see us start winning games with a little bit more regularly what we're at the moment, and get a few more points.
Only 1 goal separated the...
Rugby fans in Darlington and Hartlepool as well, so their shootout began at high noon before the World Cup final, and the first ever derby between the two clubs in the third division was virtually decided in the first 13 minutes. The Quakers went in front in 9th minute. New boy Nick Pickering crossing for young Lee Ellison to score the first of 2 goals that he got this afternoon. And 4 minutes later, Kevin Smith's header put John McPhail under pressure, and his back pass beat Martin Hodge. Darlington's other goals coming from on-loan Celtic forward Dougald McHarrison. Will have found it hard adjusting to life in the third after last season's heroics. Alan Murray's side should have really edged yesterday's game at Feetham's if the form book was anything to go by, but they didn't. Darlington came out with their guns blazing, and in the high noon shootout, they took control right from the word go.
Darlington got off to a flyer in front of 5,000 fans when Jarrow referee Alan Dawson got in the way of Keith Nobbs. The ball ran loose and Les McJanet found new boy Nick Pickering. His cross was inch perfect for Lee Ellison to score at the far post. 4 minutes later, Kevin Smith's clearing header put John McPhail under pressure. His back pass beat Martin Hodge, all ends up, and it's 2-0. Then Pickering created the third from deep in his own half. His big clearance forced a mistake out of Ian Bennyworth, and on-loan Celtic striker Dougie McHarrison raced away to get the third. Lee Ellison was the first to congratulate him, and the talented teenager got the fourth himself. Skipper Smith crossing from the right for the youngster to calmly control the ball and score with ease. Winning boss Frank Gray thought his newcomers and Ellison made the difference.
I think they did. I think they gave everybody a little lift. Their own performances were good. I think the first half especially, young Dougie showed that if we got balls in behind people, he's got the pace to get away from people, and he could have had 2 or 3 goals in the first half himself. Lee's come on leaps and bounds this season. We've always rated him highly, and his finishing today was excellent, as good as any you could see.
But Frank's opposite number was absolutely furious with his side.
No, we haven't performed today. We've had a couple of performances off experienced professionals who wouldn't get a game in the school team on that performance today.
And a performance that obviously angered you as the manager.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, we're paying their wages and we expect something in return. We didn't get it today, and I was quite disgusted with some of the performances there today.
What do you put it down to, Alan? Because they've shown they can play. Is it just lack of concentration? Or?
No, I think it's all about moral courage, and I think some of them were lacking in that today, and that's very disappointing. I think big matches, you have to perform, and I think some of them were lacking in moral courage today.
Well, the Hartlepool boss definitely not a happy man, and a glance at the league table shows his side now just 2 points and 4 places ahead of Darlington, who have a game in hand. But they're both still in the wrong half of the division.
The Darlingtons suffered an early setback in their cup quest. Kevin Smith's optimistic back pass let in John Cook. It needed a penalty 5 minutes later to square things up. Lee Ellison, the calmest man in the ground, his 8th goal of the season. Into the second half, and a chance for Smith to make amends for his earlier mistake. A powerful header, 2-1. Then a fairly innocuous-looking challenge led to the afternoon's first sending off. Lee Turnbull, the man to go, his second bookable offence in the eyes of the referee. But that seemed to knock the fight out of the visitors. Just before the end, Trevor Hebbard tackled a little recklessly. Referee Jim Parker sent him off too. A third player got a red card after the final whistle. To complain to the FA about Saturday's referee Jim Parker. He sent off 3 players and booked 9 others. Some boardroom news
Out the lower regions of the 3rd division after hitting rock bottom last week. They'd been overshadowed by neighbours Hartlepool so far this season, but yesterday it was the Quakers' turn to shine. A return to winning ways at Feetham's has given them the perfect lift from the foot of the table.
Jimmy Hill's Fulham travelled north for one of the division's less attractive matches of the day. But it was goalkeeper Jim Stannard who failed to take the snatch of the day, and captain Kevin Smith's shot came back off the woodwork. 18-year-old Lee Ellison was on hand to give the Quakers a 20th minute lead, though. The teenager with the goal-scoring touch almost added a second. He was first to react to Les McJanet's punt down the middle and run at goal. Only this time the keeper did enough to stop him from scoring. Fulham's main threat came from former Newcastle player Gary Brazil. Just before the break, his glancing header gave Mark Crudder catch of the day. The strong running of Andy Toman almost extended Darlington's lead, He was nearly through when the defender, Mark Newson, stuck out a boot and the ball bounced to safety off the crossbar. Indeed, the Londoners not only survived, they hit back and equalised. Watch for number 10, Brazil, as the ball comes back. He heads past Prudder. Unlike last week when they lost after being ahead, Darlington picked themselves up to win. And what a second goal. Ellison has time to see the keeper off his line and chip him with an up and under. The third was also something special. Toman freed Mitch Cook down the left. The fullback picked out on loan Scott Dougal McCarrison at the far post, and it was 3-1. The only blot of the day, McCarrison was later sent off for aiming a kick at a Fulham player.
He pulled up within 6 minutes against promotion favourites Birmingham. Mitch Cook setting up Gary Gill. But City were level 9 minutes into the second half. Ian Rogerson cutting inside and unleashing a real thunderbolt. After that, Darlington were pleased to hold on to their point.
Football, it must have been Darlington's Frank Gray. No cup glory ahead for him, just a long battle for third division survival. But the Quakers' spectacular performance at Chester must have given him as much satisfaction as any cup giant killing.
Darlington just had to get something out of this relegation battle against a Chester side that hadn't won since November the 2nd. But it didn't look good when City took the lead after 9 minutes. Paul Consteve finishing off the move. But Darlington were to lack nothing in resolve. They struck back in style. Gary Gill's perfect cross, powerfully headed home by Nick Pickering. 7 minutes later, they scored an even better goal. Again, Gill, the architect. Steve Mardenborough grabbing the lead with a ferocious drive. But the Quakers still had a few more tests to survive. 2 minutes before half-time, Mick Tate's attempted clearance drops over keeper Mark Prudder for a demoralising own goal. But Frank Gray sent out his team for the second half in fighting mood. It was Mardenborough again who restored their lead with a precise piece of finishing after 55 minutes. This time the Quakers never looked back. 2 goals in 3 minutes finally overwhelmed Chester. Lee Ellison and Gill cleverly worked the right flank. When sub John Borthwick turned the ball across goal, Ellison got the reward for his running. Gill again started the 5th. Kevin Smith turning up to cross, and Borthwick seals a really encouraging day out for the Quakers. 5-2.
If Chester had picked up the points yesterday, it would have dropped Darlington right on the bottom. As it is, the Quakers moved up 1 place, thanks to only their 3rd away win of the season. Let's hope it is a turning point.
The other end of the third division, Darlington took on Torquay United.